Okay, let's follow the same pattern that Michael used this morning. We'll call on 2 people at a time, one from each side. Please identify yourself, be brief, and ask a question rather than make a comment, please. So, on this side first.
Peter Humphrey, I'm an Intel analyst. Minister Yakış, you mentioned that you saw no circumstances under which Russia would surrender its veto. I believe there are 2 circumstances. One would be for the United States to surrender its missile defense shield in Europe, or at a minimum, integrate Russia at 100% into such a system. And second of all, for us in the West to extract a promise from the revolutionary forces that the Russian submarine base in Tartus would not be shut down. Those 2 buttons could well move a veto to neutrality in the UN Security Council. Don't you agree?
Okay, and this side, please.
My question actually kind of continue of his question, but this way, regardless of what's going on last 10 years or last 18 months in Arab Spring, the bottom line, my understanding is a battle of influence, basically, between West and East. When I say East, I'm talking about North Africa, Middle East, all the way to China. So the question is as a half American, I call myself because I wasn't born in this country, but my daughter born. So I also pay tax, I vote. My question is, why at least past 10 years, to the ambassadors is, the American policymaker, in the name of the security, the American interest, spent almost, God knows, trillions of dollars, and all this life we lost. Is America, or West as a whole, is a better position in influence-wise in Middle East compared 10, 20 years ago with today? I mean,
thank you.
That's the question.
Okay, Mr. Minister, if you want to answer the first question. You can. I think you can. I don't think you have to go to the podium for each answer.
Part, I don't.
Regarding the question of the negotiations, I mean, in which case Russia wouldn't may agree, you are right. I said I did not say that it will never agree, but it will do its utmost in order to support the present regime. And you are right, if for bigger reasons, bigger agreements, Russia finds to its advantage that it is going to benefit from it, it may agree to support the fall of the present regime. For the second question second part of the question that you mentioned, if the Russian naval bases will remain there, Russia may not agree for this concession to give up its support to the regime, because Russia's only interest is not maintaining the naval base there. It is more than that. It is to come back to the Middle East. And its presence at a level comparable to the Soviet time, during which it had a very visible and strong presence in the Middle East and especially in Syria. And the naval base is only one portion of it. So by giving a concession to maintain the naval base, it may not be sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the second question was directed to both Ambassadors Wilson and Pearson.
Okay, I'll go first. Thank you very much. I would say that the more important question is not influence. Influence goes up and down, but whether the interests of the U.S. are the same today as they were 20 years ago, I would say that they are. And there are three. One is to avoid a general war in the Middle East. The second is to encourage the economic development of the region. And the third one is to make it possible for, I'll say, democratic or pluralistic governments to gradually assume power through the region. So those three interests have been there for 50 years, and I predict they'll probably be there for the next 25. Thank you.
I would only add that I think it's probably incorrect to assume that what's going on in the Arab awakening countries is a one-way trip down the tubes for Western interests and Western influence in that region. I think that's a profound misreading of what has given rise to the revolts that have taken place. And I strongly suspect it's a misreading of where the new leaders will want to take their countries. They will want their countries to succeed. And among other things, that will require a strong relationship with the United States and with the West.
Okay, next round of questions on this side, please.
My name's Erin Petrie, and I just wanted to ask a question in regard to this ongoing theme today of this strong U.S.-Turkish relationship that's developed over the past couple of years. Now, is this strong relationship between the U.S. and Turkey, is that a possible challenge to the Turkish bid for EU accession? Because I know Ambassador Wilson spoke to the fact that there's only 24 hours in a day, and Turkey needs to figure out where between the EU and the U.S. they really need to spend the most time.
Okay, and from this side?
Hi, Doğay Alp from George Mason University School for Conflict Resolution. My question actually goes both to U.S. ambassadors and the representative from the EU delegation. It's been argued that in the past couple of years now that the Turkish armed forces basically come under the direct control of the Turkish government. There is an observable democratization process in Turkey. Nonetheless, at this point, there is close to I think the number is now 100 journalists currently in jail, around 3,000 Kurdish politicians are in prison. And in the past decade, when we looked into the EU reports, there was always a criticism in the state of human rights in Turkey. But recently, that criticism have become less and less. And I would also like to hear from the U.S. ambassadors on their opinion about the state of human rights in Turkey. Thank you.
And the first question, it wasn't directed to anyone who wants to answer that, please. Feel free.
Whether it
Okay.
is alternate.
Okay.
If I understood the question, the first question properly, it was about whether the American-Turkish relations is a substitute with Turkey's relation with the EU. No, on the contrary, Turkey believes that its relations with any country in the world, be it countries of the Middle East, Balkans, Caucasus, and in Central Asia, or the major powers like the United States, such better relations is not a substitute for Turkey's relations with the EU. On the contrary, it is a complementary dimension of it for the following reason. The European Union will take Turkey more seriously if Turkey maintains better relations with the countries of the region and with the United States. And both the United States and the regional countries will take Turkey more seriously if its relations with the European Union goes better. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think for the second question, he wanted to hear from both you and one of the American ambassadors. Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Perhaps if I can actually also react very quickly on the first point, saying that it can only be good to see the EU, US, and Turkey sharing common objectives and concerns, and I would not see any particular element of competition between these various actors. In relation to fundamental rights, I mean, I don't have here a specific answer to the individual cases you raised, but to say that we are seeing definitely fundamental rights as an absolute priority in our dialogue. As I mentioned, I think during the intervention, having a discussion with this was one of the first topics and elements that we choose in discussions with the Turkish authorities under the positive agenda. I'm not 100% familiar with the ongoing reforms, but I understand that there is a quite important judicial reform package which is currently under discussion within the Turkish parliament, and it's something that we are strongly encouraging. We're encouraging also efforts to table a fourth judicial reform package that will follow on, and we hope that these elements will actually help improve the situations you mentioned.
I would just say that I think the U.S. and the EU share, and many millions of Turks share the vision of a Turkey where there is a robust freedom of speech and a lack of concern about the consequences of speaking out and protection under the law for that freedom. And I do believe that the EU process is very helpful in that regard, and I think that Turkey has continued to have those discussions, and I think you have seen some responses to it. There is widespread concern in the United States about the journalist. I can't comment on individual cases either. There are reliable reports that circulate of journalists being forced to give up their jobs and of people being intimidated because of allegations made against them when they wish to exercise their freedom of speech. And I share Minister Yakış's point that that's to deal with those issues directly and fairly and justly is an ambition that Turkey has, and I applaud that ambition. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have 4 minutes left, which would be time for probably one very quick question, and I'd like to choose somebody who has not asked a question in any panels yet today. Okay.
I haven't either.
There we go.
Thank you. This is for Foreign Minister Yakış. What are your thoughts on how to improve Israeli-Turkish relations? We heard this morning from the current ambassador who said, well, the way to do this is on the table. Israel can kind of take it or leave it. I wonder if you have further remarks. Please.
Actually, the government's position was explained by Ibrahim Kalın a few moments ago in his Skype program. I am one of those who believe that Israel and Turkey need each other. I never enter into the discussion of which one needs the other more. It is like husband and wife, who needs the other more. But in case the two countries overcome their emotional dimension of their problem, it is not a substantive problem to be solved. Perhaps the present governments are not ready for it because they have committed themselves perhaps to a far extent that they cannot reverse. Otherwise, the solution, it's not an unsolvable, unsurmountable difficulty. And when this difficulty is, eliminated, both countries will benefit to a very large extent, both at the level of bilateral relations and also at the regional level. The third countries will benefit from it as well, because Turkey was playing a very important role as message carrier between Israel and the Palestinians and with Syria. And now these third countries are also deprived of this opportunity because Turkey has no access, has lost this leverage. So it is not only for the bilateral relations, but it is for the entire region that it is very important. And I still expect that either one of the parties will give up or some sort of dilution and erosion of these emotional things will be eliminated, or we will see other political development which will make it easier. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all 4 of our panelists, not only for their informative and perceptive comments, but also for sticking so closely to the time limits that were imposed on us. Again, join me in thanking them.